over the past month, unfortunately, Callie Newberry, who was a local sports writer for many teams in the area, including East Coast, who we are going to be bringing on today, unfortunately, she passed away in a very sad car accident. She absolutely would have been someone who we would bring on to this podcast. And we just want to send our deepest condolences to her family and friends. Chef?
Yeah, we're just extremely saddened by the news that we heard about a month ago. And like Nick said, we just want to send our condolences to the Townsend family, to the Whiting family, anyone who was affected at all by the incident. And just we're deeply saddened by the news, like we said. And like Nick mentioned, Callie was, someone who we definitely would have had on the podcast to talk all things sports, as she ran an amazing account. The sports report, if you guys, I'm sure everybody knew about it, but just extremely saddened by the news. We wanted to send our biggest and deepest condolences to the family. So,
And I never met her personally, but from what I've seen all over in social media and things of that nature, she was a shining light on this world, and she will never be forgotten for what she did for our community as a whole. So,
I mean, I actually had the chance to speak with her through an interview during my hockey season, and she was just the most, upbeat, kind, happy, cheerful person, and it just saddens both Nick and I to hear the news, and many others as well. So we wanted, again, before the podcast even started, because we're going to be talking about sports and with East Coast Michigan, we just wanted to, first and foremost, just send our condolences to the sports community and to the family of Callie and anyone who was affected by the incident.
welcome back to the Talk of the Town podcast. I am your host, Nick Cartmel, along with my buddy Logan Sheppard. Logan, say what's up.
What is going on, everybody? We're so glad to have you back here on the Talk of the Town podcast. Like my buddy Nick said, we're going to jump right into it here. Thankful for our second guest coming out here. Just a little recap of last week. We had Casey Harris on the podcast talking everything Port Huron pizza and his background as a business owner. And now we're very excited for our next guest here, Nick.
Absolutely. So I think without further ado, where's my phone? There we go. We got a little intro typed up for our guest today. So let's go ahead and bring him on. Originally from Canada, our guest today has coached or assisted for many elite level baseball teams and is now the director of the East Coast Michigan baseball program. You may also know him for his love of traveling and teaching. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kyle Sheppard to the podcast, along with East Coast Michigan alum and current Madonna University baseball player, Derek Ruiz.
There we go. Woo-hoo. Thank you, guys. Welcome on. What's up, man? What's up? Let you guys get settled here.
Alrighty. So, first off, why don't you guys just kind of introduce yourselves?
Yeah.
Just give us a little bit about yourself. Whoever wants to go first here.
Go ahead, Chef.
Well, I'm Kyle Sheppard, originally from Ajax, Ontario, as you guys said, in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
I played college baseball over here back in 2001 to 2005, both at SC4 and then at Saginaw Valley. And then I ended up moving back here with my fiance and now my wife. She went to Port Huron Northern, so I've been living in Port Huron again since 2014, I think.
Yep.
Well, you guys know me, of course, but I'm Derek Ruiz. I played for Shep for about 3.5 years. I attended Port Huron Northern, graduated from there under Coach Nate Manis. So now I play at Madonna University. I was a freshman this past year. I'll be going to my sophomore year this fall.
Awesome.
That's nice.
Yeah, well, thank you guys. We're super excited to get to know both of you. Like I said, we both know you personally, but there's a lot of people out here who get to know you guys. A little bit more about East Coast Michigan, kind of just what East Coast is, right? What the program stands for and the goal they try to have to get players to the next level. So we're super excited, and I know our viewers are super excited as well to get to know more about East Coast. So
Sure. So, I mean, let's start out with where we are right now in the program,
Yeah.
So what are some recent tournaments that you've maybe competed in or what you got coming up here?
Right now, our high school teams are about halfway through their summer. We've had each of the three teams, 15U, 17U, and 18U, have each had 3 tournaments. We have 3 left. All 3 of those teams are going to Notre Dame this weekend, which is usually a great spot for us to go and a chance for our guys to see a really great campus in South Bend. We have a 13U and a 14U team, and they have played 5 tournaments. They have 3 left as well. They're both going to go to Cincinnati in 2 weeks. That's kind of our out-of-state event. They're having some success. Both teams have won a tournament and had some success in some other ones. The 13U is at Legacy in Brighton this weekend, and then Coach Fowler's 14U team is in Macomb this week.
Yeah. No, and I think that's just to kind of dive in here and to kind of touch off something you noticed or something you said. I noticed that in the East Coast Michigan program, you guys are jumping around a lot of different locations. I know the program's known for kind of stretching out and trying to get to those really good quality tournaments. You mentioned Notre Dame, Cincinnati, Brighton, those really good top-notch tournaments. And kind of just to touch on that, what is the importance of getting to the tournaments that are quality as opposed to kind of going into those tournaments that are not as high quality, if you will. But kind of touch on that, just the importance of getting to the quality tournaments.
I think, and Derek probably can attest to this too, I think the one thing that we're starting to notice is there's more tournaments out there, and it becomes harder for us to really try and select where we're going.
Right.
And when it comes to our high school players especially, is where do we think college coaches are going to be? What's in their general radius where they can go see not only our team, but other teams in the tournament that are going to be competitive too. And I'm starting to see, honestly, like the tournament format that Derek and Logan, you play with us too, it's becoming
More showcase.
Yeah, it's becoming, and in some cases, not what I want it to be.
Right.
And it becomes a grind sometimes. I mean, this will be our 4th weekend. The 4th weekend in a row, I'm going to be in a hotel, which is not ideal for us. And, just like your families, when we were playing on the road, aside from maybe your parents or one parent here, one parent there, a lot of the families can't come and see us play too. So I'm thinking about changing the model a bit and seeing if league play might be something that we're going to touch on, and where we can play. Maybe we play at Sanborn, maybe we play at Northern, and try and have some stuff closer to home, and maybe do a little less tournaments and really be more selective. But something that we're kind of spitballing with the coaches right now.
Okay.
Right, because I've seen, on Twitter a lot especially, there's a lot of issues sometimes with a lot of these travel tournaments, right? I kind of was scrolling through your Twitter, and I remember seeing it was just like, it was a pretty expensive tournament, and yet the baselines were all out of whack and everything like that. So would you say that's a pretty big issue right now with just travel ball in general?
Yeah, I think so. The Notre Dame event that we're going to is $13.95 per team to play in, and that's a 4-game guarantee. So you're looking at almost $350 or so, give or take, for one game. And for example, our 15U team was playing in Saginaw Valley this weekend, and they mercied a team in 2.5 innings.
Really?
That was a $250 2.5 inning game.
Yeah.
That's something's wrong with that. It just, the players aren't getting the reps, and when you don't really know who you're going to get and who you're going to play, it becomes hit or miss, and the value may not be there anymore.
Yeah, when I think that's the most important thing about summer baseball too, right? When guys aren't playing high school baseball, they're not really in that high school mode. They want to be able to get their reps in during the summer, right? They want to be able to work on the things so that when it does come to high school or when it does come to college, for a lot of these older guys, they're dialed in and they're ready. They got their swing ready. They got the location ready if they're pitching, stuff like that. So I can definitely see where you're coming from on that point, and just making sure that the guys are getting their reps, they're getting their money's worth, and they're also being able to get to play against high quality competition, which Derek, I know you can attest to that as well.
Yeah, and I think just one thing about 2.5 innings, it's really not a whole game.
Yeah.
You get to college, you're at the field for 10 hours some days on a doubleheader, right? You get a taste of what a full game of baseball feels like.
Exactly.
7 innings are some of our doubleheaders. We do a 7, and then we actually follow that up with a 9.
Yeah.
So, yeah, 2.5 innings, it's just not enough to get.
We were playing at Albion this weekend, and in their dugout they had a breakdown of their schedule. If the game started at 1, when did Albion get to hit? They hit it at 11. So obviously with stretching and getting there, they're probably there by 10. So like you said, if you're playing a doubleheader, it's and that's one of the biggest things that we try and push, at least on the 18U level, is trying to teach them what it's going to be like.
Right.
And if you want the glory in some cases of being a college athlete, there's a lot of demands that go with it. And, Derek can probably talk to that. He spent a full year as a freshman at college level, and maybe he can justify what I'm saying if we do prepare you well or not.
Yeah, no, I think it was one thing that I always liked is during our practice times we had a lot of guys there. We did the 17 and 18 U's, so that's maybe 25 guys ish around there. And I mean at college you have about 40, 40 or
Right.
45, whatever. So learning how to be productive in 2 hours, a lot of moving parts, a lot of moving stations, whatever you got to do, but it all gets done if you do it right. And I think that's one thing we did. We would do like mass BP, mass fungos, because that's what you're doing in college. And I think when we did that last summer for me on East Coast, it was just like I got the idea of what it had to look like moving
Exactly.
forward.
And I want to stay on this topic of just preparing people or players for the next level, right? So besides like obviously playing the quality competition, having quality practices, everything like that, what are some other things that you focus on? Maybe it's something outside of the field, or maybe like the weight room, things of that nature, education. So what are some other things like that you focus on to really prepare guys for the next level?
Yeah, I think the thing that we try and do as best we can is really try and make the players understand what the recruiting process is like. And we've been able to, through our reputation we've been at a program since 2009 now, we've built a good reputation as far as the quality players that we have in the program. And then we've started to make connections with those college coaches, which are always changing. Obviously, there's been even just, I don't know if you guys know right now, but SC4 baseball coach is open right now. He resigned last week.
Oh, wow.
Did he really?
I didn't know
Central
that.
Michigan has a new coach. Northwood's looking for a new coach. So all those things are changing, but we try and help them understand is if you're looking at a school, we get kids to make lists of schools they're interested in. And we try and we'll have Zoom meetings with the player and their family and talk about, okay, what are your goals? What are your expectations? What type of school are you looking at? And we try and give them honest feedback, because it doesn't do anybody any good if they have these expectations to play at the University of Florida or Tennessee, and that they may not be there yet.
Exactly.
And
Right.
so we try and target things. And then every weekend, for example, we try and create a pitching rotation for every tournament that we have. And we'll post it to the families in the program. We'll post it on our social media, but I'm also sending it to coaches one-on-one. So typically on a given, especially if we're playing in state, whether we played at Lansing or we played at Hope College 2 weeks ago, is we're sending that out to 25 or 30 coaches that I have a relationship with already.
Right.
And they'll say, okay, what are you looking for in the 2023 class, 24 class? So a pitcher or an outfielder. And then we try and target the fit for them. And then, yes, we let them know that the second question is going to be, what is their GPA? Do they have video on the player? And then they're going to ask, what kind of work ethic do they have? The weight room is obviously a big thing. And I think that's one thing that we saw from Logan and Derek's 16 year as far as the physicality of the players and where they were at to where they got in 3 years because of that. A lot of it was the work they did on their own, and there's players that are willing to put that time in.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the, obviously I played for East Coast Michigan for about 3 years. And I think that was probably one of my favorite parts about the program was that the coaching staff, and especially you, Kyle, was that you guys were involved in the process. Like it wasn't just like, I know, a lot of programs say, yeah, we're a program that's designed to get you to the next level. But in all honesty, are they actually taking the steps necessary to be like, hey, we're contacting these coaches, let them know you're playing, what position you are, what your velos are, stuff like that. So I think that was one of my favorite parts about the program, aside from like the baseball aspect, but it was more about like we're in it 100% with you to get you to the next level. So I really appreciate that program.
Yeah, and I mean one thing I think, like what Shep did, we did the No Doubt showcases where they would come to us, our facility at the Vandy's place, and I mean that's really all you can do as a player is if you get a program like East Coast to supply you with that coverage, and then at that point it's just whether or not do you have the numbers,
Exactly.
And I mean that's really all you can ask for is if a program contacts coaches, reaches out, has showcases where they already have video, like Shep said, like a coach probably before even asking Shep would look in their profile to see if they have video, right?
Right.
And I mean, with that being said, it's just like at that point, it's all you can do as a player, and then it's just your time to go.
Exactly.
So I mean, I want to kind of go back. We were speaking on the issues a little bit there. I feel like another issue could also be I've seen on Twitter. Obviously, Twitter's a terrible place. It's also a great place at the same time.
Right.
But,
Best of both worlds.
yeah. So I've seen a lot of things just about like money hungry coaches and things of that nature. How do you go about communicating to parents, right? That's not like what your program's about.
I think there's probably, I would guess, maybe 10 to 15 travel baseball programs in the state that those owners will pay their mortgage with the money from the baseball program.
Oh, yeah, I don't doubt
that's
it.
their job.
Mm-hmm.
And how much they're bringing in, I don't know. It
Right.
could be 20,000. It could be 150,000 a year, to be honest.
Wow.
And that's one thing that I've always preached. And honestly, this to go back a quick story here. When I was, after I finished my college playing and coaching days, I was coaching in Ohio at a Division II school, and I moved back to Toronto, and I started coaching for a pretty high level travel team called the Ontario Blue Jays, and I was getting paid a salary as a travel coach. And I remember coming across my old high school coach. We were at a practice. I was helping at my old high school kind of in my free time, and he kind of made this point to me, and it stuck with me. He's like, years and years, nobody needed to make that kind of money to coach. You did it because you loved it.
Right.
And that kind of hit me, and I probably spent another 4 or 5 months in that program, and then I was like, you know what? I can do more with my life than being a travel coach only. I feel like I could impact more people than just going to a batting cage for 35 hours a week and flipping balls and throwing BP and stuff like that. So that's when I kind of made sure I wanted to get back into teaching, and that was my degree was in that, and I knew I was coming to Michigan, and that's one thing that I stress is that's my career,
Right.
and I do this because I love it. I've run ECM now. This is our 7th season since I've took it over, and my son doesn't play in the program. None of my kids have played there yet, and I still feel like I try and put the passion and the individual attention that I try and give the players. Because some of the programs, those ones that make money, they'll have 2 or 3 teams at the same age group, 315U teams, 316U teams, and we're trying to stick to one so that we can focus on those 12 or 13 players and reach their goals, and not trying, like you're saying, kind of blow smoke and say, what we do this, we do that, you're going to get these achievements. I don't make promises to players because you have to earn what you get.
Exactly.
And if you put the time in and invest in what we're trying to do, the results will come.
Oh, yeah.
But it's something that I try and make sure that I understand that this is a passion of mine. It's not a job for me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. No, and I 100% agree. And we were just talking with this with Casey too about
Yeah, that's what I was gonna mention.
the idea of about if you love what you do, it never feel like a job. And I feel like that's where you're coming from. Is like, you love being at the baseball field. You obviously grew up playing baseball. That transition from being a player to a coach, it's always been in your roots. So showing up to the field every day isn't a job to you. It's something you love doing. And I really like how you touched on when you heard that, when you were in Canada, how you were coaching that team for a salary. You kind of just like, boom, I can do something more. Obviously you made that transition to teaching and stuff like that. So, but I totally agree 100%. We just want to take a quick break here. Want to thank Mark Bynum, the mortgage man, for allowing us to use this wonderful space inside of AmeriFirst Home Mortgage Building. Again, thank you, Mark. Anyone who is interested in any sort of home mortgage, make sure you contact Mark today for all your mortgage needs.
So we've covered a lot of the program already, or a little bit of it at least. So we'll get back to that in a little bit. But we also want to just kind of get to know you more as you kind of grew up and everything. So you said you were born in Canada, correct? Born and raised for the most part. So tell us about your whole basically story of just kind of getting to the U.S., becoming a U.S. citizen.
Yeah.
I grew up I was born in Toronto, grew up in Ajax, Ontario, and my biggest influence initially was probably my dad. He was my baseball coach
Okay.
for a long time. He coached me till I was about 15. Then we took a break, and then he coached me when I would come home in the summer for college stuff. And then he became the head coach at University of Toronto for about 7 years. And he was a teacher first and a principal, so we kind of it was funny. I realized when I spoke to him, because all my family still lives in Canada. When I spoke to him a little while ago, that I'm kind of living the same lifestyle that he did, really. Maybe intentionally, maybe not, but yeah, I played pretty good travel baseball, and then in Canada, and I went to SC4 first, and got recruited a little bit over there. Coach Smith was the coach at the time, and he's now the head coach at Jackson College. He's been there for a long time. I just saw him this weekend, and then I actually went to a school in Georgia after SC4, but it just didn't really work out, and I transferred back to Saginaw Valley. And then almost immediately, I coached high school baseball up there. We were pretty successful. My second year, I was started on JV, my first ever coaching gig. This was 2005.
Okay.
And the head coach, which was actually Coach Smith's brother from Saginaw, he asked if I could go with him to a tournament and just help with the varsity team. And within about an inning, I was calling pitches for the catcher and doing this stuff. And he's like, all right, you're not going back down to JV. So then the second year, we actually lost in the state semifinals. That was when they still had it in Battle Creek. And then it was funny because I ran into my Saginaw Valley coach at Battle Creek. And he's like, would you want to coach at the college with me next year? I'm like, all right. So I was assistant coach at Saginaw Valley for the fall. And then there was a grad assistant opening at a school in Ohio, and I took it. And I was there for about 3 years, got my master's, which is really paying off right now as a teacher. So
Yeah,
they paid for it. So, and then I moved back to Toronto, and then actually started to talk to my wife kind of through social media a little bit, and got to know her. And then I things happened pretty fast. I think we were dating for 6 months before we got engaged.
Wow.
I was able to surprise her because I asked her on my birthday to marry me. So
Awesome.
Okay.
we even had our family dinner that night at the CN Tower in Toronto. So,
Oh, wow.
but then we started the process pretty quick to try and get me to be able to move here legally, even though I'd already been a student here. I had a master's degree,
Right.
all that stuff. And long story short, we applied for a fiance visa. Have you ever seen that show 90 Day Fiance? That show that's out there.
Okay.
Kind of like that.
I've heard of it.
But
Yeah.
it was going to be about $3,000 just to apply to do that. And then if you wanted to get a lawyer to help you, that was twice as much. And so we tried to do it on our own, and we kind of misread some of the paperwork, and we got married before the process had played out.
Okay.
And then I went to the embassy in Montreal, and the guy's like, are you already married? I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, this fiance visa is void, then you got to start over. So we were,
okay.
Wow.
she was living here, I was living in Toronto. We were married for close to 2 years before I could actually move here legally. So it was tough. So I was basically coming here for 2 or 3 days, going back home for 10 days, coming back here. And then finally 2014, we got approved and everything went well. And I basically they took my passport and had to put the information here that I was going to be a citizen, or not a citizen, but a resident. And basically within about 6 days, I was like, all right, I'm coming.
Right.
So we went to a U-Haul truck in Ontario, drove it to here, and unpacked my stuff. We lived on Stone Street for a bit. And then we were good to go at that point. So that was 2014.
Okay.
So
No, yeah, and it seems like obviously it wasn't all just like a one shot, one goal. Like it was very like lots of trials, tribulations, obviously, especially with your wife and growing up playing baseball. So what was kind of like that transition from being a player to being a coach? What was that kind of like? Can you speak on that? Was it challenging for you, or was it more of like, I played the game so long that it kind of came natural?
I think it was tough at the beginning because, I was younger. I would have been 22, I think, when I started coaching, and trying to relate to the players, but trying to keep that separate of the coach-player relationship, I think was challenging initially. I don't know if it was because that I picked it up pretty quickly because I was a catcher, which usually something that position. Sometimes those guys have more success. We see a lot of major league managers as catchers. I'm not trying to compare myself to them, but I was just able to kind of see the whole game. And I'm by no means an expert at certain things, and by no means am I a pitching expert, things like that. But I was able to kind of see the whole game, and started out slow as I was an assistant for a long time initially, and kind of learned from some good coaches like Tim Smith in Saginaw and my dad, and coached for different teams. And then just kind of, I think maybe 2009, I started to get into a little bit more as a head coach. And when I first moved here in 2014, I knew I wanted to coach somewhere. And just so happened that the PH varsity job was open at the time. And I applied, and I had a couple people that knew me from the area, and they kind of helped get my name out there to the AD at the time. And things moved pretty fast. And I think so that was the fall of 2014. I had lived here for 2 months, and I got the head job at PH. And
Wow.
and that was a good experience. I did it for 5 years. There were some challenges and trials and tribulations, and but it was rewarding, especially when we had success at certain times. It was very rewarding.
Yeah. No doubt.
So while we're kind of on that topic of the whole progression of your coaching and everything, and all the different like experiences that you had, how much did that play a role like now into? So how many? What I looked up the list on your site. There was like good 10 positions there, maybe more, of all the coaching positions you were in. So how much did all that experience play a role into like what you do now for ECM as a director of the program?
Yeah, I think they all affected me in different ways, and I think the years I coached in college was really eye-opening to kind of see what that side of things was like, how college coaches act and what they expect, and that helped me as far as pushing those things on my players because I've been there and I've recruited players from the other side. I spent time as an associate scout with the Texas Rangers too, and so I can kind of have that realm too if necessary. And there's a handful of kids in the big leagues right now that I've coached. Jordan Romano, the closer for the Blue Jays, the Naylor brothers on Cleveland. I coached them a little bit in Toronto.
Yeah, they're good.
So it's been, and I'm, like I said, this is my 7th year doing this. I'm still trying to get better.
Right.
I'm trying,
Oh, yeah.
trying to adapt and trying new things. The game's always changing, with the technology. Even just in the last couple of years, like I said, I was a catcher, and the catching style has changed since I played. As far as how they set up and how they receive and all those things. So I'm trying to adapt and improve, and I always try and welcome feedback from the parents and the players as far as what they think, what they like, to try and provide the best experience that I can.
Yeah. No, and I don't want to jump off of that topic too, and I want to jump to you, Derek, just for a quick question here, and just terms of like, I know Shep was talking about how the game has evolved and how it's changed over time. How have you sort of kind of picked up on that transition, especially since you're going through such a big transition with high school to college? How have you sort of used this new technology to your advantage, if you will, stuff like Blast and Pocket Radar, stuff like that, and kind of just touch on that and how you've kind of used that to your advantage to get to the next level and are still using it.
Yeah, well, one thing I want to say is there's this app called Applied Vision Baseball, and what it does is you can virtually hit off pitchers, and you can see spin rate, curveballs, changeups, sliders, sinkers, stuff like that. And it'd be cool if I could like show it because it zooms in on a pitcher like from home plate, and it like puts up the strike zone. And then what you got to do is once he releases the ball, it gives you like a millisecond to like decide whether or not it's a strike, what pitch it is. So I think Apply Vision Baseball, that app, I don't know if you've heard of that, Shep, but I've been using that a lot because the main thing now is just it's always been seeing good arms, right? Because as you get older, you're going to see better pitchers, and you can't just go out and face a guy every day, right?
Yeah.
You can hit all you want off the tee, off the machine, but you really want to be in the box, and I think that's helped me a lot, just to pick up spin, pick up tendencies. All right, if I know I see a slider has a red dot in the middle, typically when it spins, stuff like that, how you can lay off pitches. And like you said about the game evolving, everything's bigger, stronger, faster, especially at the next level. Like, when I came in the fall, it was like, all right, I'm competing with 22-year-olds that have been doing this for 4 years, and you got to be expected to perform at the same level. And that's just the main jump. But yeah, the game is definitely becoming more power, more power all around. Guys are throwing 100, even in the NAI. Like we saw when we went down to Georgia, played like Georgia Gwinnett, Georgetown was a good team. Like those guys are throwing low 90s, mid 90s. Their closer was sitting 93 to 96.
Okay.
And that's not even the best of the best, right? It's not even at the Division I level. And so all around the game, And that's for recruiting too, like with Shep, is like the level of play, D3, D2, D1, NAI, it's all spread out and
Right.
everyone's good. Like there's no more, oh, you just this, and then like we face some dudes, you know.
For sure.
So
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I find it funny how like every business, every sport, it can be a sports team, anything like that. Because we were talking to Casey last week, and he was talking about how keeping up with the trends, right? In his restaurant, like they just put in some green ivy, things of that nature, and keep it up to bring more customers in. So Shep, I just want to ask you, how do you find that balance of keeping up with those trends and all this new technology in the sport of baseball, and then how much do you balance that with more just like the old time style, I guess,
Kinda
and
keeping
just
the
kind of
roots kinda
sticking to
thing.
your roots?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is one of the challenges as a coach. As I get older, my experience as a player gets further apart, right?
Yeah.
So it's much different than when I played. And even just we were playing this weekend, and we had like 2 guys in the dugout with massage guns. Like
Okay, yeah,
no,
Yeah.
that would never have happened when I was
Right.
playing, you know. So,
Yeah.
but there's sometimes have people have these routines that they've gone through the technology or the different strategies that they've used, and they're working for them, and they feel that they need to use it, and that's fine. And I think that's where, like I said, I'm trying to, like, I'm part of the ABCA Coach Association, which is a big college association of coaches, and I have membership there. So they have a conference every January, and I've gone personally in person because they're Nashville, Dallas, San Diego. But if you have access to, you can watch the videos online when they're done. So we've tried to adapt, and I actually just implemented something last week at practice where the head coach at Stetson in Florida, before every practice, they have a 7-minute defensive like skill work. So like you have middle infielders are together, outfielders are together, first baseman, catchers. And then basically they have this routine that they use at the beginning of every practice so that they know they're getting their skill work in 7 minutes a day. It's fast. It's a lot of reps. And we put that in this past week at our practices on Wednesday so that we can make sure that we're doing those things so that if we have to focus on something else, like, for example, this week we're going to focus on reads on ground balls and flat balls for both outfield and fitness because we feel like we're struggling with that right now. We'll do that 7 minutes of work so we know they're getting their skill work, and then we can focus on what the goal is for that week. Because we try not to overdo it. We know we have about a 90-minute practice or so for the guys. It's hotter in the summertime, and the high school teams are playing Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and we have Tuesday night, so it's already 5 or 6 days a week. So we have to rest our arms sometimes. We have to make sure that we're not overworking them and overdoing it at the same time. But I think adapting to the technology, and you know what Derek said, that sounds pretty interesting, but we try and find ways. If there's ways to help players develop, then we're going to try and find ways to use that too.
Oh yeah. And there's one point that I really love that you made there was how you kind of took was it Stetson College you said you were looking from. So we were actually, similarly enough, we were talking with Casey about the same thing last weekend, and how as a business owner or an entrepreneur or a sports director, it never hurts to look at what other programs are doing, especially at the next level when that's the level that you're preparing your players to go to. I want you to kind of touch on that in terms of like what is the impact or the importance of not just being like, this is the way I do it, this is how I do it, and just kind of keeping in your little bubble, but actually reaching out and being like, hey, this college or this other travel team is doing something, maybe we should do that. What's the importance of doing that?
Yeah, I think the preparation and trying to make our players even more appealing to coaches. So like we were playing in the Jackson area last weekend, and Coach Smith took me around campus, and I saw where some of our players present are and Cramp where they live in the dorms, and just kind of getting a better sense of what the atmosphere is like. And even things like, what are these coaches doing? What are they doing for their programs that work? I think if you're not kind of hustling as a business guy to try and steal some ideas sometimes to make your program better, a lot of my philosophies whether it's bunting or base running or catching have come from someone else that I've tried to put into my philosophy as far as things I like and things I don't like. And that's the biggest aspect, I think, is just trying to improve and create that culture of what college coaches are expecting, not only when you get there, but to make you recruitable to them too.
Right.
Right. And I feel like with that, it's a lot about just growing as a coach, right? Because because I see a lot of coaches, they get stuck in their ways and they're really stubborn. They don't want to change. So how, kind of touch on that for yourself. How much have you had to kind of grow as a coach and even as a person for your players?
Yeah, I think in the last 4 or 5 years, we've introduced arm care programs with driveline technology. We've used, I think 2 years ago, I was able to get subscriptions to the Blast Motion for the returning players, and then this year, every single player got a subscription. So we're using that at practice, just because. And you guys know this, in this day and age, people want instant feedback from things. Just like if we're sending a text or an email, you want to get a response from that person right away. And so we're trying to use that technology to give them the feedback, whether it's video or just numbers, to make those adjustments. Because sometimes we can instruct and give feedback ourselves and try and give pointers, but if we can justify that with the technology or the video or the numbers, it makes them more open sometimes to making those adjustments.
Sure. Exactly. And just to kind of jump off of that idea of like just the program in itself and how you guys are adapting, Derek, I want to turn to you. And I know we've kind of skimmed over it just a little bit over like the surface of like East Coast Michigan and the impact it's had on you, but I really kind of want you to dive into a little bit about what Kyle and the program East Coast Michigan actually did to help you get to Madonna or get some other looks for some colleges, just so some viewers out there know like how much these coaches are actually involved in your process. What are the specific things that they do, to get you to that next level?
Yeah, well, first of all, I chose Madonna, and Shep actually had nothing to do with that, which is kind of funny because, right, I'm playing East Coast. I actually met the guy on my own and built a relationship with him, and then later committed there. But my recruiting process was actually like kind of early. So it would have been that junior year fall, which is like where coaches can like start talking to you. I actually got an offer from Mott Community College, and we played. I think it was Coach Roger. He came in, or we played at Mott a few times, and he saw, and they're always recruiting. Great school over there, Mott. They always recruit, and they actually offered me, pretty good offer. But it was like boom right there. So I obviously didn't want to make any decisions quite yet.
Let's clarify. Maybe I wasn't involved in Madonna, but I helped Eric get about 8 other offers that he just chose not to take them. So let's keep that in mind.
Yeah, I will say that. No, but Shep opened up my whole recruiting process. So once that happened, other schools kind of were talking to Shep. Shep said, "Hey, I got this guy. Come and watch him." And then later that summer, my 17U year, and then my 18U year. Or it was my 17U year, right? Because then I committed after that. But he had schools come out and watch me. Like Kalamazoo came and watched me pitch when I used to pitch. Hope College was another one of the schools I was looking at. Siena, and then Madonna and Concordia, and like SC4 too. But I mean, yeah. So Shep started all of that, and once you kind of get like an offer, one school, schools will kind of trust that and maybe reach out to Shep even more and say, "Hey, I want to watch this guy play." But so that was huge because I started pretty early. So it starts right there, sophomore year too. Is that sophomore to junior summer transition is big.
Yeah. Well, that's why I asked, was because I knew that East Coast Michigan had a large impact on your recruitment, because I remember even just us playing together, coaches would be coming out to watch. Like I remember that Kalamazoo coach coming out to watch you pitch. Like that's why I wanted to ask that question, because I just feel like as a player's perspective, the impact that the coaches had in that recruitment process and just how much they were actually involved. So
yeah, and I mean another one too was when we played at Eastern Michigan. Alum from Saginaw, who then went to Kalamazoo, was there to clock me and stuff like that. And I mean, he even transitioned to Kalamazoo. So now if one coach watches you, say he leaves to another school, they might still tag you along to that school too, which is like what Shep's saying is one college coach leaves, might bring his players to that school, stuff like that. So, yeah.
So this podcast, it's called Talk of the Town, right? Well, we don't have to tie everything directly into Port Huron, right? But I would like to touch on kind of how hard it can be for some players to get noticed in such a small city like Port Huron. It's really not known, right, for its sports all the time. Obviously, we've had some great athletes come through, In the past, we had like Braden McGregor playing football. He's helped a lot. Truscott for hockey. He just got named captain.
Yeah.
If you guys want to come on the podcast,
Good.
we got spots open. But how how do you go about that whole idea of getting players recognition in just a small town?
Yep.
And yeah, just touch on
I
that.
think when I was coaching at PH, would have been my second year, I think, and I don't know if you guys remember, like Brett Wagner was on the high school team when I was there, and I was East Coast Michigan. My friend Scott Teslick, he ran it until 2015, and in 2016, which would have been Brett Wagner's sophomore year, and my second year at PH, there was no East Coast Michigan team, and I was coaching another travel team down south, kind of in the Detroit area, while trying to preach to my high school players they needed to play on a better summer team to get better and potentially get whether it became a college thing or not. And then I was like looking at myself in the mirror and I'm like, well, I'm asking for this, but can I offer it to them?
Right.
Because trying to get them to come to that team, they were going to have to drive an hour, and the cost I felt was too high for them. And so I talked to Scott and I said, I'd like to kind of continue what you're doing. He had moved out of the area, and we had a lot of good players that were from the area that were playing all over the place, like Brett Manis and Phil Griefor and Ian Jansen and all these guys that were really good, and they wanted to stay home really and play with each other. So 2017 is when was the first season that I kind of restarted it. And with the goal in mind that I wanted to create a program that was going to help kids have an opportunity to play in college they wouldn't otherwise have.
Yeah.
If East Coast Michigan didn't exist, would there be players that wouldn't get looks, like you said, that deserved the opportunity if they worked at it? And that was my number one goal. So it might not mean we're going to produce 20 Division I players every year, but if I have a kid that can go to SC4 or to Elma or to Madonna or to Concordia, or we have a kid Michigan State commit this year that's having a really good high school season and playing well for us right now, but it's about trying to create opportunities that weren't there. So I have two kids from Alpena on my team right now. I got a kid from Sandusky, Marlette.
Yeah, all over the place.
So just kids that are not seen, and that's what they felt that we brought to the table. And I think they looked at us as a program that would give them that attention that they needed and opportunities that they needed too.
I don't mean to that's really important though you said that, because I mean, I could have went and played anywhere else, but financially it's just not realistic.
Right.
It wasn't realistic to drive hour and a half, and then on top of a $3,500 fee. Like,
Exactly.
to be honest, like I played with Hits, which is located in Macomb, about 30 minutes away, until I was 15. And that's when I made the transition to East Coast. And like, to be honest with you, like I wouldn't have probably played if it wasn't for East Coast, or even get noticed, right? Because I wasn't going to go out of the area, stuff with my parents. Like, it just wasn't feasible too. It's a lot of money to be traveling, doing all of this. But when we can have ECM, it's really nice, because I'm one of the players that needed that program.
Oh yeah, and I think you made a really good point there, Shep, too, is about we noticed that these guys are these really good players, or they're going to traveling a lot of these different areas. And I know myself, growing up playing hockey, I wish I would have had a really, really good, solid program in Port Huron, which, I mean, to be realistic, there just wasn't, right? There wasn't a program that was a really good travel program that was going to get me to the next level. But now that you're kind of bringing all these hometown guys who are really good into the program, they get to play with each other. They get to play with their buddies. And at the same time, they're also all trying to get to the next level. So I think, what you guys are doing is it's perfect. I think you guys are going heading in the right direction. You guys are keeping improving every single summer, and I'm just seeing really good results out of it. So
yeah, and I think I'm not going to lie. There's expenses to the program.
Oh, yeah.
And on our players, I'll be honest with the high school fees about $1,800 for us, and it has gone up. Inflation's gone up. Tournament costs have gone up, but we're still typically much less than the others. But at the same time, any player in my program has the ability to fundraise his entire fee off if they so choose. So I'm trying to provide that next level coaching and competition, but trying to not exclude people.
Exactly.
You know?
And like you said, you have the player, like you have the past players that play college. You have Derek to back that up, right? You have other college players to back that up. Like you said, somebody's playing Michigan State next year. So I think that's very important. But
Yeah, our whole roster last summer was like you look at, I think top to bottom, all the guys are in college,
Right.
and one of them, Adam Broski, Big Ten, Michigan State, all the way to NAI, D3, Cam Bleasdale, stuff like that, JUCO, Jackson College. So our whole team last year, that was really fun, and the fact that all of us kind of like went on to play at the next level is pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think with our graduating class this year, since 2009, which is about 12 or 13 seasons, we're going to probably be at about 125 college athletes.
Wow.
through ECM,
Nice. Yeah.
I would say, and we got kids like from the guys that play with Logan, like Eli Lower's playing basketball at Wayne State, Jake Townsend's playing football at Northwood, and I take pride in that too, because I feel like maybe it's not baseball, but I hope that the way we ran the program and the training and the character building has influenced those careers too.
Right.
We have covered quite a bit, right, about some current things going on in the program, how you've kind of built the program, all things of that nature. But what I really want to get into is really just tips for, younger kids out there, maybe around 13-ish years old, and they're really starting to kind of grow in their bodies just a little bit. So first off, what would be one main tip that you have for if there's like one thing that you just want to absolutely blast out there to any younger kid out there? What would be that thing?
Well, I'll say this: this has been my second year as the head coach of the Fort Gratiot pitching machine team for my son Joshua.
That's a good start.
He's 7. Is just trying to, and it's been a challenge because coaching in Little League has been a different experience. I hadn't really coached kids that young before. But trying to just keep up with the fundamentals and the development piece. So, for example, with our team, with his pitching machine team, we try and move players around every 2 innings, outfield, first base, second base, catcher, just because they need to see if what they enjoy and try not to put players at certain spots. And that's, I'm not trying to call anybody out here, but sometimes the teams that we're playing, their coaches are not doing that. And my goal with Little League was to make sure that of the 12 players on the team that I had, I want them to want to play next year and have fun and the enjoyment of it. And I'm sure you guys who played too can kind of attest to that, is you want to keep enjoying it as long as you can before it starts to become more of a, not work, but more of a
chore.
Yeah,
type thing.
this is I'm trying to make a career of this, or I'm trying to create opportunities for this, is try and enjoy that as long as you can. And we've tried, and Logan, your brother played for us a little bit, is we tried to do younger ages, and I'm trying to stick as best I can to try and keep it at 13U and up, just because I think Little League is important. But again, sometimes you have to try and balance what's the development piece.
Exactly.
And my son's showing some advanced skills, I guess, at 7 years old, and I've tried not to push anything on him. I never ask him if he wants to play catch or hit. I let him do that, right? So that it's coming more from him. But yeah, the balance of trying to make sure he has a decent arm so far. So can he play catch? Can he keep on maintaining that development and not necessarily take a steps back by doing things to take it easier based on who he's playing with? Sometimes that's the challenging thing. So we'll try and find times, like we're going to have a youth camp coming up in 2 weeks for ages 6 to 14 in St. Clair, where we try and find that balance, as we're going to still give them ways to develop their arm strength and their running speed and swinging aggressively as a hitter, and still trying to maintain that piece for what's next. And the development thing is, you hear that word a lot, I know, but that's something that we really try and push, because it's important at the next level, not only just in college, but getting into high school, going from 13U to 14U, where you're going from a smaller field to a bigger field. And that's something that we're always considering.
Yeah. Well, I think it's such an important tip, because, staying rooted to your fundamentals, especially at a very young age like that, because I think nowadays there's so much information out there that a lot of younger kids can get overwhelmed with, like, especially if they're not being taught the fundamentals at a young age. If they're not being coached up at a young age, like I said, then they're just taking all this information. They don't know what to do with it. So I think definitely starting young in the fundamentals, ground balls, hitting, throwing, catching, stuff like that is really important for the young guys. And I think you make a great point there. And I also liked how you touched on your camps you're doing. I think as a program, it's good that you've evolved not only to playing the games and practicing, but you're now starting to act as a source for people to come and learn. So you've kind of developed that reputation as a program that is not only getting players at the next level per se, but you're also having stuff for younger guys so you can teach them, even if they're not in your program yet, that you can still teach them the fundamentals. And once they get to your program, they know what they're doing. So I really like how you touched on that. And I know, Derek, you can probably attest to that. And I know I can attest to that as well. Just having that teaching and going to those camps like I've been to, I think it's just really important at a young age. And so,
Yeah, I think when you talk about like development and what that really is, and the one thing I was talking to Shep on the phone about this like a couple weeks ago, I see a lot of players not doing, say, on defense per se. There is a right way to go about things. There is a 100%. There's a right way to turn a double play, right? And I see a lot of players, they're just not doing it correctly, and that hasn't really been corrected in the past. So now, like when they actually try to go do a movement per se, they don't, And I think that comes with watching the game, watching major leaguers, watching college players, because you'll see they do everything the same exact way. How they feel to attack ground balls, whatever, turn double plays, the techniques, it's all the same.
Right.
So there is a right way to go about things, and I think that's just. It's hard to do that and instill that. And I think that's one thing that was always instilled with me is I always watched older guys and how they do things, because that is the right way to do it, right?
Exactly.
And once you learn that, you don't really have to revisit it. You just keep hammering it, and then you get better and better at that. So I think the one thing I've seen a lot, like even at the camps last year, I'm seeing there's some great talent, but there's a lot of kids that just have like raw ability, but they don't have the necessarily correct movements that you have to be able to do to play at the high school level, then onto the college level, but really just into the high school level too,
I'm going to take a little bit of a longer story here, but so like you said, obviously skill is important, or building the skills is important, everything like that, especially at a young age. But also, like you said, especially at the young age, it's important to make it known that the game is supposed to be fun, right? So basically, I'd say some of my best memories, 100% some of my best memories came from Little League, right? In the younger ages when you really weren't worried about too much other than just going out there, having fun, playing, while also still learning the skills, right? And that comes with having a good coach. I'd say right around 9th, 10th grade is when I started like trying to like specialize in a sport, right? And it was baseball. I didn't want to play any others, or I kind of want to play basketball. I kind of want to play other little sports here and there, right? I played hockey for a little bit there, but I had this idea in my head that I just needed to specialize. I needed to only play baseball. I didn't listen to anybody around me, friends, family, whatever, to use, different athletic abilities and kind of have them transfer over into the game. But where I'm kind of going with this is once I started losing my passion is right when I started to probably specialize. And at that point, from my like 11th grade, 12th grade on or so, it seemed like you said, more of a chore, more of a almost like if I don't go do this, I'm like not going to be a good player. Instead of like going out and like, hey, I want to improve, right? It was like I kind of have to improve type thing. So my question for you is on that multi-sport topic, right? What's your opinion on specializing too early or specializing at all?
I think certainly there may be a time for it. It just depends on the individual.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that by the time you're 17, you got to pick what sport you're doing. Our program being where we're located and the type of players that we bring, we typically will have guys that will play 2 or 3 sports in high school. And they're trying to balance their time. I mean, me growing up in Canada, high school sports are a little different here, as far as the support, the emphasis on them. I played hockey, I played baseball, I played basketball, I played volleyball in high school. So I went through that too. And I think the athlete that we're looking at today, I think it's important that they do that. I think playing and being part of your school spirit and that atmosphere is good. I think the thing that we try and challenge our players to do is, like, if I was in your shoes, maybe is you should play basketball, but maybe if you think baseball is your number one sport, make sure you find time to put that work in outside of what you're doing for basketball. So that might mean if you have basketball practice every day after school in the wintertime, then maybe you're getting up early and you're doing a throwing program in your basement or at the gym with the coach. That's where we see the players that are having success in our program, because most of our guys are doing those things, and that's important, and they enjoy that. And we're very accommodating, especially during the school year when we have practices or we have workouts that we understand that they're going to have to miss sometimes. But we're asking them to put the time in outside of that. If you're not working out with us, even show us, take video of what you're doing at the cage at your school, because you can't come to our practice, so we can assess it. We can look at it. I think it's important to do those things. Some players start to, as they get older, I would say specializing before your junior year probably is not something I would do. But as you get into your junior year, especially your junior summer, which Derek talked about was very important to him, sometimes you have to really start to target what your goal is. And and that's the sad thing too, is like we're seeing one of the negatives from this now is we're seeing issues with kids who play their junior summer and they feel like they're not getting the college interest that they think they should get or deserve. Where my philosophy with a lot of them is if they still work hard that next winter in their senior year, opportunities could come still, and that happens a lot. But some of those kids see that at the end of their junior summer that, well, I don't have any schools calling me, so I'm just not going to play next year.
Right.
And to me, you have, after your high school season, your senior year, you have about a 6-week span to maybe play competitive sports almost never again, maybe, take advantage of that. So we'll have, sadly, like we had 2 kids, one from Algonac, one from Richmond, that just quit right before the summer started. They played their high school season and they're like, well, I'm not really that into this anymore. Maybe because they specialized, or maybe sometimes because the high school season can be demanding with what they're doing and they just played 40 games and they need a break, which is sad to me that those things happen. But I do think multi-sport athletes and the skill that you get, as long as you're able to find time to work on it, and also getting in the weight room.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
I think a lot of sports help with that too.
For sure,
if you play football, you're strong in general, right?
You're always in the weight
You
room.
have to be. Yeah. So if you play, I mean, I wish I would. I could have played football, and stuff like that.
You played when you were younger.
What position?
Yeah.
What position would you have been?
Oh, I would have been the best slot receiver in this town. Kidding.
Yeah,
Just kidding.
I can see it. I can see it.
No, but that's a decision I had to make too, because I am an all around good athlete, and even when they want me to play basketball, they want me to play football, at the end of the day, I just didn't want to live with, if I got hurt, now I'm screwed for baseball. That's just a decision you got to make your own, and I'm cool with that too. So even though I specialized in baseball I played 8th grade basketball and that was it.
Yeah, but you had COVID in your high school career too, so that kind of changes things a little.
But either way, I did specialize in baseball, and I will say that if I could go back, I would probably play sports, but at the same time, I also like where I'm at because of that decision.
And I think it really just depends on, I wouldn't say what your goals are, but kind of your personality type and your traits.
For sure.
If you grew up competitively playing lots of different sports, and obviously when you get to high school, you're probably going to continue that. But I mean, if you're just passionate like you, I mean, I know personally from being your best friend for so many years, your passion was just baseball, right? And that's totally fine. I think it's just, about where you want to go and how far you want to take other sports. And so it's okay, this is my goal. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. But to touch back on what you said, Shep, I think definitely not only playing multiple sports is from a hand-eye coordination aspect, you're gaining these traits, but just from a mental aspect, you're taking so many things from I know playing hockey and playing baseball at the same time helped me out tremendously just from a mental standpoint, because hockey is a very mentally taxing game, and so it kind of helped me form a more of a kind of a mindset heading into the game, preparation, routines. You take all that stuff from your other sport I don't know, me personally, I took it from hockey to baseball and vice versa. So I think it's very important for young players to kind of get their foot in the door as soon as possible. And
Yeah, and even me, like when I'm trying to get better as a coach, I don't just look at baseball coaches. Like I'll look at coaches from basketball or football or hockey. What are they doing? Whether it's player motivation or mental things that you say is, what can I take from this coach? Soccer coaches. There's a series on Netflix I used to watch that had like a different coach from every sport, and they kind of went behind the scenes with them, and I would jot stuff down on my phone and how can I take this little thing and implement it into my program?
Exactly.
Even though it's not a baseball thing, you know?
I mean, yeah, because all the same principles apply, right? To all sports. But I just want to go back a little bit, backtrack here about just, again, the multi-sport athlete thing. So when you're not, or let's say you start specializing, right? And obviously it's important to get in the weight room, nutrition, all those aspects of the game too. How important are those for a younger player, or even 18-year-olds, whatever it may be, to pick up on those early and start those habits to grow? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that with the technology that we have now, and even like Derek mentioned, like an app, things like your calorie intake and things like that. So things can be so much more down to the final little period thing. Everything can be tracked now. But
Sleep, all
and
that stuff.
I think at the same time though, it's also important to still find time for other things, because like you said, you focused on baseball so much that it became your life, and you were like, man, I gotta go hit again. I gotta go to this lesson. I gotta go take round balls.
It was like faking it kind of.
Yeah. You still have to have those things that interest you. Like me personally, like Derek said about kids watching baseball, like I rarely watch baseball games on TV anymore, because I'm trying to keep the passion of when I'm going to the field or when I'm going to practice, I'm into it. I just watched I watched the Tigers games for 9 innings tonight, and then I'm watching something else.
Yeah.
College baseball, some of those things, those excite me as far as how they compete, and because our players are getting close to there, or there's guys that we're seeing compete. But I think it's important to have those interests so that when you are ready to put that work in, you can be focused on it, because it's not as much of a grind to you. You know.
Just to touch on that, Shep, like one of the huge mistakes I made in my junior year into my senior year, kind of like that transition when I started getting recruited, was I'd put in all this work and still think I had a lot to do, which indeed you do. But if you go about it that way, thinking I just did all this and I didn't get better, then that's the wrong mentality too. Yeah. You got to realize that you are getting better by putting the work in, doing all the reps. You're not just doing it for nothing. That's going to mount up over time. And that's the one thing, like in college now, like we have our time to get our stuff done, and that's what happens. Now we go do school, we lift, practice, put in your personal time, get out. Like that's how it works, and that's how you become better too. Right. And if you do that every day, that's how you're going to be more consistent over a course of the whole year.
Exactly.
I remember seeing a quote, and it applies for everything in life, sports, whatever. I believe it was along the lines of the hardest worker in the room thinks that they're doing the absolute least. The laziest person in the room thinks they're doing the absolute most. So I mean, that mindset is big for anything that you do, whether it's me and Chef in our creative businesses, you as a coach, you as a player, anything like that. So
no, and I think you guys both touched on some really good points there, and I kind of want to transition a little bit in terms of a jump back on East Coast as a whole. And we've talked a lot about East Coast Michigan, who they are, what you guys represent as a program. And there's obviously, you're a baseball program, you're a coach, you're a player, but there's also a lot of behind the scenes stuff that goes on in terms of advertising, marketing, like the actual business side of running a program. And so, Shep, I kind of want you to touch on that a little bit. And I know you've mentioned earlier some events, and we all know some events that you host every year. Your award gala, your camps, stuff like that. Is there any challenges in terms of tackling like getting your name out there as a program? And you can also touch on some of the events that you guys do host, but just I want you to touch on that topic in terms of like running an actual business.
Yeah, I think like I mentioned to you guys off camera, like ECM is something especially for me and some of the coaches. Andrew Miron has been one of my go-to guys for the last 5 years or so. Brian Mihai has helped a lot the last few years, and without those coaches, we wouldn't be where we're at. And it's tough because a lot of times I'm asking them to take 6 weeks off 6 weekends in a row, typically in the summertime, and some of our tournaments start on Thursdays, and sometimes they're taking time off of work. But I would say, ECM is something that's on my mind, and I'm doing something for it every single day. Like even just today, like our 13U's playing in Brighton and Legacy, and we get an email that says, okay, you have to have the roster online. You have to have parents sign a waiver, and there's always something to do. I talked to 3 college coaches today. We're trying to make sure that we have our rotation set so we can get those promoted and we don't have to wait too long. I asked my 17 coaches yesterday to do some homework, and I said, can you guys I want you to find 5 schools within an hour of South Bend where we're going this weekend so we can email them and let them know our schedule and start to reach out. So there's always something, whether it's getting insurance set up, whether it's paying fees for facility time or buying baseballs, because half the tournaments we go to, we have the supply of the baseballs,
Right.
Even though we're already paying over $1,000. So there's always something going on, which makes it fun and exciting. But it also can present challenges because I have a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old, and we're trying to make family time for those things. For the first time since I started the program, my family came with me to Hope College last weekend, and they're going to go to South Bend. So it makes it that much more enjoyable too, to enjoy it with them. As you guys know, I mean, any success you've had in athletics, if your closest friends or loved ones weren't there, you wanted to share that with them as soon as it happened. And that's something that, that's why I do this, is because my family supports what I'm doing, and it becomes more rewarding that way too.
Yeah.
And something I've noticed with the whole ECM program as a whole, like you said, the gala, a lot of your players come back, right? Like a lot of the alumni come back for that. So I love like the whole family aspect of the whole program. And I think that just speaks a lot to its success. And it's not just like, okay, I played for this team, I'm gone, right?
Right.
Really cool event.
Yeah, we try and
Really
create
cool
an atmosphere that is a family atmosphere. And with the alumni, we've created the Hall of Fame with players that played, a while back, and we encouraged more guys to come. So we've had that gala down at City Flats Hotel the last 2 years, and we'll have the 3rd one this year. And, we're trying to, my goal, and this may sound cliche, but I'd like to go to these guys' wedding in 5 to 10 years, because we keep that relationship going. We're still talking all the time. And we're still, even players, like we'll have guys that we talked about that will go to junior college. Well, usually they're going to try and find a 4-year school eventually after 1 year or 2 years to go to. Yeah. And I'm usually still involved in that process too. So if they're trying to find a school to go to, they'll call me or they'll text me, and I'll try and reach out to those contacts that I have to assist them.
Exactly.
Just because they finished playing for us doesn't mean that our relationship's done by any means.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That gala, it was a cool event,
It is.
Especially to win the 2021 Pitcher of the Year award. I don't pitch in college, so that must speak to something. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, he had a few good weeks, I guess, that year.
And then, hey, Chef, my guy behind the plate, he caught it all.
We were the duo. I was say that was fun.
It was cool. So,
I do miss that. I'm not gonna lie. I miss that.
And fun. One thing about the gala too is why I said that, like, having awards, having stuff like that, something to drive you, to keep you, like you want to win the pitcher of the year, you want to be the hitter of the year, you know, that stuff keeps you going, and that's what, keeps the whole team and the program involved, and it shows that there's competition, not only that you're playing against, but on the team.
Exactly.
We're all trying to get that, we're all trying to get the award up there.
And like Nick said, it's not like a, I play for the summer and we're done. Like
no,
you're like you guys both said, you have a relationship. You're having these galas. You're having these camps. Like it's never ending. There's always stuff going on behind the scenes, and you're trying to do everything you can to make it as cohesive as possible. And I really respect that.
Yeah, and you've heard those phrases where people just say it's travel baseball, and that sometimes that bothers me, because I feel like in some ways we're more connected and more hands-on than your high school coach is.
Absolutely, yeah.
And 100%. I think that with the gala too, I wanted to mention that we've created some scholarships the last couple of years to help some of our graduating players out, whether it's through the Ernie Testick Scholarship, who's the former owner whose dad passed away, or we connected with the Riley Gleason Foundation this year, who a former player that passed away too, just to honor some of our athletes that deserve it, but also to honor those past influences in the program and keep their legacy going.
Yeah, for
I'd be
sure.
lying to you guys if I said I didn't want to make the Hall of Fame.
We know.
Hopefully,
we know
I'll come back there in 5 years and or something.
Okay. So I mean, I think we've talked about a lot of good
Yeah.
topics. This is a great podcast, by the way.
Oh yeah, it was really good.
Especially for the second one, right?
Everything
Um,
flowed really good.
One other thing I just want to ask you, just long-term goals. What are your long-term goals for the program?
Well, I think it'd be, we've expanded from typically one team. We're now at 5. We had 7 last year, but I think that some teams, like I said, we talked about the business element. That's my goal is not just to get bigger, just for the sake of getting bigger. I want to make sure that we're doing things right. And I felt like when we had 7 teams last year, we were spreading ourselves thin, both player-wise and coach-wise. So we kind of dialed it back a little bit to make sure that we're still giving the quality experience that the players deserve.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good things going on in the area right now. I mean, with the renovation at 4 Sports going on, with their changing some things there to kind of make it more of a baseball facility inside. And we've had conversations about that, especially with us being the prominent program in the area. Yeah. So we're hoping that those things are going to continue to help build the development of players in the community. I think our goal long-term is just to continue what we're doing, which is continue to provide opportunities if players so choose to try and play in college, that we continue to do that. And that's where it's more rewarding for me, is seeing the alumni page, seeing the alumni that are moving on. And it's not about us trying to win the Notre Dame tournament. And I'll tell you the truth, I threw 2 trophies away last year that we won because it's not important. A plastic trophy in my garage doesn't mean anything to me. It's about trying to get those guys to the next level if they want.
Yeah.
I think one thing too, like alumni, I come back from college, I'm home for the summer, I'm right back to where I was. Not a lot of facilities around here, not a lot of stuff, so I still I'll go to the practices, whatever, train with the guys, and Shep always has a spot for me, always come get work in, because that's I'm used to doing that every day now, and I gotta stay up on top of that. And that's the one thing too, is I like going back and helping like the guys that are playing 18U right now and stuff like that. And
Exactly.
kind of seeing how they're doing.
Family atmosphere.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's going to do it for this podcast today. Thank you all for tuning into the Talk of the Town podcast. I'd like to give a special thanks to you, Coach Shep, and Derek Ruiz.
D-Money.
With the what you got there, Ray-Bans?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, guys.
Just some classics.
With the Ray-Bans. Contact him if you need a mile or anything. He does some side work. You never know.
He does.
Check me out on Photography by Logan.
He's on there a lot. No, but seriously, you guys, thank you so much for just joining us. Like we said, our goal with this podcast is just to make not only the area known, but like you said, the local sports teams and businesses in the area that a lot of people might not know about. So East Coast Michigan, obviously a very prominent travel baseball team and program, and just getting guys to the next level. We want people to know about that. So we appreciate you guys being on and taking time to just let our viewers know, who ECM is and the behind the scenes of it. So
I appreciate you having us on and letting us kind of tell our story, and very enjoyable today.
Yeah, for sure.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
All right, that'll do it. Thank you guys again, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Thank you guys. Peace.